Hello and welcome to an exclusive hour-long programme with one of my dearest and oldest friends, Jackie Collins. How are you?
I'm good, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm delicious, and it's so nice to talk to you because you're funny, you're fun, you're entertaining, you're a brilliant talent, you're a brilliant actress and writer. You've got everything, haven't you?
I acted when I was a teenager, and that was to get research for my books because I always considered myself an out-of-work writer.
You say that you're not an actress anymore, but it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems to me there's a bit of a thing in show business now where I only want to do this and I only want to be known for that. And actually, that doesn't really work.
I think you're right, actually, because as I travelled across America in my tour bus this year, which was fantastic, I mean, it was a real trip. It was an enormous bus. It was the former Mariah Carey tour bus, which became my tour bus and is now Avril Lavigne's. So it's got a great history. It had this fantastic, luxury bedroom and 2 bathrooms and internet connections, and it was just amazing. A living room. And as I travelled across 26 cities in America, I got to meet everybody, the real people who read my books, who've read them for years. You know, it was sponsored by Harrah's Casinos, so I would go to all these casinos and I would speak for half an hour. Then I would throw it open, questions and answers, and there'd be 500 or 600 people there, and they'd all want signed books, and they'd all tell me their stories. Very touching was New Orleans, because I was in New Orleans. The event there was unbelievable. There were 700 people there. And so many women would say to me, you know, I had all your books, and I've written 26 books. I had all your books in hardcover, and I lost them in the floods in Katrina. And I'm thinking to myself, why are they worried about losing my books? They lost their homes, you know. It was very, very touching, and I felt so bad for them. You know, I got back to Los Angeles, and I was sending hardcover books to all these people that I'd scribbled their names and addresses down. But they were wonderful people. They had a great resilient spirit, you know, a spirit of life. And I try when I speak to inspire people now. I feel almost like, it's interesting. I feel like I'm giving people a message, even though I write these kind of books, you know, sexy and interesting and about all different ages and colors and sizes and sexual orientation. I'm still very inspirational to people because I was thrown out of school at 15, as we've discussed, and I've gone on to have 26 best-selling books, and I give that message to women that you can do anything.
It would be very easy for you to be a closed book, without the pun, and not have anything to do with your public. You're big enough now not to need to go on a bus and talk to people. But that's another thing that they love about you. You leave yourself open and you're prepared to shake hands and grip and grin, as we call it, and meet people. Why is that so important to you?
Well, you know, I think it's got to do with my website. I just love my website because, you know, before one would receive fan letters and you'd just answer them and that would be that. But now you can actually communicate with your fans, with your readers. You can hear what they think. You can hear what they have to say. My website, JackieCollins.com, is very important to me. I have a section on it where they can ask me questions and I answer them once a month. I have a section where they can request an autographed picture and I send them and I personalize it and send them, and I do all this myself. I blogged the whole tour in America. I'm going to blog a little bit of this one because I just got back from Moscow. So that was incredibly interesting. And I want to tell them about my tour in Moscow, and I want to tell them about my tour in London because I've done so many interesting things in London. I've become obsessed with Coronation Street and the X Factor because I've been here so long. Usually I'm here for 5 days. This time I've been here because I went to Moscow in between for almost a month.
We've got a ton to talk about today. Amsterdam, Moscow, South Africa. You've been all over in the last year. We're going to find out about that. Just very finally on the bus thing, did you actually sleep on the bus?
It had a king-size bed, but I didn't sleep on it, no.
I didn't think so.
I would go 500 miles on it, and I would be on my computer the whole time. That's where I did all my blogging, which was so much fun. And the driver, I had a fabulous driver, Bobby. He was Hispanic, and he would come to me and he'd kind of go on the speaker and say, "We're going to be there in 5 minutes." And I'd go, "Oh, no, I need more time." And that would be a 500-mile trip.
I don't know about you, but for me, travelling is the only time I get anything done. The phone doesn't ring because there's no reception.
Oh, yes.
There's no internet, so you don't have to worry about that. I mean, coming down to do this today on the train is fabulous. 2 hours, just sit and work.
So with you. I flew back from South Africa and I had a daytime flight and it was 10 hours and I wrote the entire time and it was blissful because there was nobody to disturb me. It was just great. I always feel in Los Angeles when I'm writing that I need a wife. because, the housekeeper will come in and say, oh, I think we might have termites. Or she'll come in and say, the dog ate this and the dog threw out. And I'm thinking, would Harold Robbins have gone through this? I need somebody who just allows me to be shut away and concentrate totally.
All right, we're going to take a piece of music. Then we're going to come back and find out more about your last year and your brand new book. And we'll also ask the question that Christopher Biggins wants to ask you. We spoke to him just a couple of days ago.
Aha!
We're back on your favourite local radio station with Jackie Collins today, talking about the new book, which is called Married Lovers. And it's actually written by you. How do you feel about this new syndrome in show business where everybody has a book, but they don't actually write it?
I think it's hilarious. It's like people going out to lunch and saying, I think after lunch I'll do a little brain surgery. Oh, there's a brain surgeon. Can you do that brain surgery for me? I mean, it's so ridiculous. And I find it insulting as a writer that you get these people who have ghost-written books that have nothing to do with them, and they get onto television and they go, oh, yeah, well, I wrote this book and, it was very cathartic. And you're going, wait a minute, you did not write a word. Why are you calling yourself a writer? And then the journalists make it even worse because they say, now we have on this woman or this man who wrote this book. And I'm like, they didn't write it. Why don't you say who had this book ghostwritten? Because it's a lot of work to write a book. It's a lot of thought. I mean, I love what I do. I have a passion for it. I've written 26 books and I love it. And somebody called me the other day, quite a famous woman who used to be a gossip columnist in America, and she's retired, and she called me up and she went, oh, Jackie, I know you haven't heard from me in ages, but, I have this friend of mine, and he's really, he's never written anything, but he thinks he could write like you, and he was wondering if you and he could do a book together. And I said, excuse me? And she said, well, or maybe he could do all the research for you. I said, I do not have researchers. I do everything myself. And I thought it was, quite funny. And another very famous man in England who's, one of the Billionaires Club said to me one day, I got something, Jackie, that, might be great for you, really great for you. You can write my biography and we'll split the money, autobiography. And I go, are you kidding me? Join the queue. I've got 3 books of my own. I don't want to be taking other people's ideas or other people's lives.
And there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can either see it as a compliment that they want to work with you, or a complete insult that you would lower yourself to do that.
It's actually a combination of both, isn't it? It's a compliment and then it's not.
I don't know whether you agree with this. It seems to me ghostwriting is a bit like me standing on stage in front of 3,000 people and playing a CD of Andrea Bocelli and making out it's me. It's really as bad as that, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel sorry for ghostwriters because, they do all the work and the slog and they put this book together and they make it look fantastic. And then you do have this actor or actress go on all the television shows and say, oh, yes, I'm a writer now. And then what happens in those situations is it might be a biography of that particular actress or actress. They call it an autobiography, but it's written by somebody else, so it's not really. And then that actor or actress says, I'm going to write a novel now because that book has had a modicum of success and they think they're a writer.
And my favourite thing at the moment is when I bring things up that are in the book and they are not aware of half the things that are even in the book because they haven't read it.
Of course.
So that's funnier still.
They go, what? I did that? I was going to say, have you read Paul O'Grady's book?
I'm getting through it. Oh,
Fabulous. And he wrote every word himself.
And we're not even into his 20th year yet by the end of it,
know.
are we?
Oh, no, he's 18 at the end of it. Wait till you get to the last line. You're going to freak. And he's writing another one now. He's already started it. But when he started to write the book, and Paul and I are friends, he said to me, oh, Jackie, I'm going to write a book. And I said, oh, that's going to be great. Just concentrate on it and you'll, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be this kind of like, it'll be fun, but it won't be great. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it.
And he's really been there. He's a worker of this business, and he might be a big star now, massive money, but for 30 years he wasn't. He was a club guy going around the world just doing Lily Savage, and the stories that he's collected. And how does that feel when you turn the tables? Back in October, you were a guest on the Paul O'Grady show. Then in November, you're interviewing him as the host. That's fantastic, isn't it?
It was so much fun. I don't get nerves. And, I wandered into the studio about 7 o'clock, did one quick rehearsal, and then we were recording the show at 9 o'clock. It was great. It was so much fun. And I had to tell, Paul to behave himself because when Paris came on, he obviously wanted to get in with the questions. I said, now, Paul, this is my show. It's actually your show, but I'm hosting tonight, so just shut up.
And when we look at people like Paris Hilton, she's in the same bracket for me as people like Katie Price. She's a smart one. She's so clever in using what she's got and making money out of it. And you can't knock her for that.
No, I think she's quite talented too. You know, she made a CD last year, which did extremely well, and she made it with all the same producers that work with Lindsay, that work with Brittany, and it sounded great. So I played a little trick on my friends. I put it on a mixed CD, which I love making on iTunes, and I would play it to them, and I'd go, "What do you think of this track?" And they'd go, "Oh, yes, great, I love it." Then I'd say, "Do you know who it is?" And they'd go, No, who is it?" And I would say, "Paris Hilton," and it would go, "Oh no, it's crap, no, don't like this." And it was so obvious. It's like there's such a snobbery with people. It's like my biggest critics are the people who've never read my books.
We're going to come back next and we'll find out about those critics with Jackie Collins next on your favourite local radio station. We're back with the author of a brand new book called Married Lovers. Jackie Collins joins us in the studio today. We were talking about Paris and Paul and the big stars in this country that you've worked with recently. How does it feel for you walking in a studio and everybody knows who you are, from the sound man to the audience to the stars who are on with you? How does that feel?
It's very interesting because I was reading a book by the guy, and I can't recall his name right now. You probably know it. The guy who does Celebrity Cook or cooking. He's a very good-looking guy. Anyway, whoever he is, and I liked him a lot, and the show was great. But he's written this book, and he goes, and they said, "Well, who's your worst guest?" And he said, "Well, I was crapping myself when Jackie Collins came on." He said, "But she turned out to be such a nice woman." And I thought that's kind of like a double-sworded compliment, because people do have an anticipation. "Oh, she writes all these sexy books. Oh, she's going to eat me for dinner. Oh, what's she like? She lives in Hollywood, And really, I don't think I could write the books that I write if I wasn't English. I mean, I lived in Hollywood for over 20 years. I was there since I was 15, on and off. And I'm like an anthropologist crawling through the jungles of Hollywood, observing with my English sense of the ridiculous.
And being over there and seeing all that goes on, it's a fascinating life for you. And again, you're as big a star, if not bigger, over there than you are here. It must be great to be you. I mean, you don't have to queue for a table, do you, in a restaurant?
No, I can get a table anywhere. That's one of the great advantages. I can call Mr. Chow's at 5 o'clock and say, "Can I have a table for 6 at 8 o'clock?" And they'll say yes. And that's really fabulous. But I'm not like an actor or an actress. I have the book between me and the public, so I am not plagued by the paparazzi. They'll take a few snaps of me, but, if Lindsay's behind me, they'll go completely nuts. And that's great for me because I like to live a normal life. I like to go to the supermarket. I like to wander around. I got in a cab in London the other day, and I said, "Selfridges, please." And the guy looked around at me and he went, "You're going to walk around Selfridges?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, you're going to be stopped everywhere." I said, "No, I won't." I said, if you don't attract attention, if you don't, if you march in there with 3 bodyguards and people all around you, and here I am a star, I said, I have a fine time walking around Selfridges and Marks and Spencer's. And yeah, people come up to me and they go, "Oh, I just read the new book. I love Married Lovers." And I said, "But they're very discreet and I'm very discreet and it's nice and, you just get on with it."
And it always saddens me when I see these stars. I don't like the public. I don't like talking to the public. They are the people that pay your bills. They are the people that make you successful.
Well, it's like that Ringo has made an announcement on his website that he is throwing away all fan mail and nobody can get his signature on anything. And so don't bother to write to him because he's throwing it away. I mean, how can you do that? I love my fans. I love my readers. I mean, they're just great, And as you say, if I didn't have these fans and these readers, nobody would buy my books.
Why make that announcement? It just looks so awful, doesn't it?
Well, he's so rich. Why doesn't he just have somebody to deal with it? I mean, it is an awful announcement. It's like, who does he think he is?
And that's the problem, isn't it? It's when you lose perspective of the fact that we all have to go to the toilet at the end of the day. We all have to go to sleep. We all have to wake up. And that we all have in common. The fact that you might be able to get a table in a restaurant, actually, the average person doesn't care about, do they?
Yeah, exactly. What does it matter? Well, unfortunately, though, what does matter is for people like Brittany and like Paris is the paparazzi, because that is a real danger in Los Angeles especially. They are putting people's lives in danger, and nobody cares because how many celebrities are there? So they're going to say, "Oh, well, they've asked for it." But they haven't asked for this kind of terrible attention of people chasing them in their cars, of people going through red lights, of shoving pedestrians and children out the way. They don't care who they trample if they want to get a picture because they get a lot of money for those pictures. So that is kind of a dangerous side of it. And I do think there's going to be another tragedy like the Princess Diana one because I see it. If you're in the Ivy and there's a really famous, and that they don't have to be really famous like a Mel Gibson. It's more like the girl who's on a reality show like The Hills. Those are the ones they want the pictures of. And you know that something bad is going to happen one day because these guys go nuts. And they're not even American. I mean, they've all got foreign accents. I don't know where they come from or how they get licenses to carry a camera and shove it in your face. But it is dangerous. That it's the whole traffic thing is really dangerous.
Do you think, though, if they moved to Doncaster or Swindon, that the press would follow them? Could they get away from this if they moved out of showbiz capital La La Land?
I think if Madonna moved to Doncaster or Swindon, so would a batch of paparazzi that camp out outside her home, you know. It depends who the celebrity is. And there's about, I don't know, I would say there's about maybe a dozen celebrities who would merit that. And they're not even huge stars, but they're huge media stars. Like you have Katie Price in this country and Peter, who apparently get divorced and married or separated and married all the time. But, you know, the press love it because, and the Beckhams, you know, when they're in England. In America, they're just another famous couple.
Are you showbiz pals with them?
I don't know them. I did, an interview when they moved there. I was doing an interview about one of my books, and the journalist said to me, "And what do you think? What would you tell Victoria?" And I said, Just watch out for the predatory females. That was all I said. It was a double-page spread in all the newspapers, and I was so humiliated. I said to Mel B the other day, "For God's sake, tell Victoria I never said anything." You know, Jackie says the warnings, you know. Unbelievable.
And that's the amazing thing about you. You say it is headlines, and that's nice as well in one way.
I guess so.
At least it means they care.
Yeah.
Coming up next, we'll find out about Amsterdam and you. We'll do it next here on your favourite local radio station. We're back with Jackie Collins here on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield with the queen of publishing at the moment. She's a lady that the name goes before her, and if you see it on the top of a book, you know it's going to be half decent. You've got a new one out called Married Lovers.
Yes.
Tell me the story of how this came together then.
Actually, I have two heroines in this book. One is Cameron Paradise, who's this beautiful American girl who goes to Australia, because I was in Australia, and I had the idea of creating an Australian guy, a big surfer, and then the two of them get married, and then they move to Hawaii. He becomes abusive. She flees to Los Angeles. So that's how the idea of Cameron came about, the Australian connection. And then I was in Amsterdam, because I travel a lot, and I saw all these girls in the red light district, and they sit behind, you know, windows, and the red light is on, and it's so sad, and they were so young. And I got hold of one of the pimps, and I said, "I want to talk to the girls," and he goes, "Oh, yeah, that'll cost you." And I said, "Yeah, I know it'll cost me. All I want to do is talk. Here's some money. Let me talk to one of them." And I talked to this very young girl, and she was from Slovakia. And her story was that she had this very large family and they had no money. And this guy comes to their door. He'd seen her in the village because these guys, they're mostly Turkish pimps, go out and sort out these girls in all the little countries. And he said, "I'll give you $500 for your daughter. I'm going to give her a good job in Amsterdam. You'll be very happy. We'll send you, you know, a little bit of money each month." And off she went with him. And she's kind of resigned herself to this lot in life. But I wanted to create a Russian girl. I don't know why. I just had Russian in mind because there were a lot of Russian girls there. And so I went to the internet and I started rehearsing. I started investigating Russia and seeing what I could do about this character, Anya, that I created. And then I came across the Chechen War, and the timing was right. It was in the 1990s, and I thought, I want her to arrive in Hollywood eventually in 2008. And so it worked out that she was 12 when the war started, and she became a refugee, and then she got trapped by these pimps, and they took her into a brothel in Poland, and she was still a teenager. And then she ended up in the red light district of Amsterdam, where she was rescued by one of my American characters and finally comes to America.
And what is most interesting is your book is fiction, but it's not, it's fact. And it is astounding to me in 2008 that you could meet somebody like that. And this isn't just one person, this is a whole load of people that are brought to one place. It's barbaric, isn't it?
It is barbaric. I mean, and you can read things in magazines and newspapers, and I read a tremendous amount, and things that happen to women across the world. And this is nothing compared to what happens to a lot of women. So yeah, there is this kind of theme in the book of a woman being abused. But as I said, it happens all the time. Last year I was in Canada and I went to one of those homes, they're called safe houses, where they had these women that had been abused by their husbands, and they all had the same story. You know, the guy would beat them up, beat the kids up, and finally they escaped and they found the safe house, but nobody can know where it is because the husband will come and he threatens, I'll kill your family. If you ever leave me, I'll kill your family. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I gave you a broken nose last night. I love you so much. You have to take me back. I love you. I'll never do it again. And it's the same old story. They all have the same story. And it's so sad in this society that we live in. And we're in a fairly civilized society, England and America, compared to the rest of the world, really, as far as treatment of women is concerned. I mean, if I had another life to live, I'd probably be something in politics to do with women's rights.
And help me with Amsterdam generally, aside from the book. They're reviewing the red light district. The council are talking about getting rid of it. Do you feel that most of the women are not there by their own will in Amsterdam, and there is a very dark side to it? Because we see it over here as, we're going to go for a great weekend, a fun bachelor party in Amsterdam, and there's no serious side to it whatsoever.
That is so right, you see, because these women are not there by choice. A lot of them have accepted it. This is my lot in life, and this is what had happened to this girl. This girl that I actually talked to was like 19, and she'd accepted that this was her lot in life, and that's what I wanted to show with Anya when I wrote the character. And when people pick up Married Lovers, they think, well, what is this character doing? Well, how is this going to happen? And I didn't know what she was doing when I started the book. I told her journey as the book progressed. So I would write Anya, a little bit of Anya, then I would go to Hollywood and I'd write Cameron Paradise and the other characters, Mandy, the Hollywood princess, and Ryan, who's like the good hero, and Don, who's like this sexy talk show host, and all these characters. And every 3 chapters I would think, I'm going to go back to Anya now. But I would not know what was going to happen to her next. And as I wrote it, these things happened to her. But yeah, I think it will go underground in Amsterdam if they do get rid of the red light district. And that's even worse. At least there's some kind of protection for them. There is one woman who works with the girls who has a kind of place where they can go and if they're really badly beaten up or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, in this day and age, it's pretty sad. They've got all these sex clubs there and you see appalling things that I wouldn't even say to you on the radio, and I'm sure you know about it. But the unfortunate thing in this world is that the biggest business, for instance, in England and in America is pornography. And you might, am I sounding like Mary Whitehouse? Because I write a lot of sex, but I write erotic sex, I write equal sex. Women are always equal to men in my books.
And the old adage is it's the oldest business in the world, and it will continue to be. And what is incredible, as you say, it's regulated right now in Amsterdam, but it's not really, because the women there are still not there by their own choosing, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back next and find out about the dialogue you hear in your head when you're writing these books. Married Lovers is the new book. Jackie Collins is our special guest. We're back on your favourite local radio station with Jackie Collins today, talking about the new book, Married Lovers. Help me then how you write these books. Do you hear an ongoing dialogue in your head and then you translate that to paper?
I never know what I'm going to write next. And we've talked about this before, Alex. When I sit down with my pen, I have a black felt pen, yellow legal pad. Something comes alive in me and my characters just start to take off. And I don't know what they're going to do from day to day. I'm writing a new book now, which will be my next book, called Poor Little Bitch Girl. And it's about these 3 very interesting female characters who went to school together, high school in Beverly Hills, and then they all went their own separate ways, and now they're in their early 20s. And it's so interesting to me because one of them I'm writing in the first person. She's a lawyer in L.A. One is a madam in New York, a very young madam who has this fantastic kind of setup of women that she uses that are famous women who want to make extra money. And then the third one is an intern in Washington who says to her married boss, who's a very important senator, that she's pregnant and he has to leave his wife. Well, of course, he has no intention of leaving his wife. And I've had to leave it at that point while I do this book tour. And I cannot wait to get back to these characters. So when I sit down, I have no idea what they're going to do next. But in my mind, I think, yeah, I know what's going to happen. She's going to vanish and this one's going to do this. And this one is just about to, initiate a 15-year-old Arab boy into the joys of sex. And it's all kind of like, I know stuff's going to happen. I don't know what stuff until I write it.
And the most most interesting thing is, as creative and as funny and as clever as you are, real life is always cleverer. It's so real, isn't it? Because, of course, it's happened over there with Craig and all these other senators who've been caught in toilets, and it's unbelievable that this goes on.
It is unbelievable. I mean, just look at Sarah Palin. If I wrote her, or Palin, whatever her name is, if I wrote her, nobody would believe it. If I wrote that scenario, that somebody running for president of America picked this girl out of Alaska, this woman, who looks like a beauty queen. I mean, every guy in the world is waiting for her to take the pin out of her hair and the glasses off, and it's all over, right?
And as for the election in America, you couldn't make that up.
You say I couldn't make it up. If I looked at these 4 characters that are running, the 2 ones that are running for president and the 2 that are running for vice president, and I wrote a novel about them tomorrow, I would know much more about them than I really should, because when I pick on a famous person to write about, I somehow psych into them and I know so much more. And these would be fascinating characters to write about. Maybe I should write a quick book about, a would-be black president and a would-be war hero and Sarah, the girl with the pin in her hair. I mean, there'd be fascinating characters to write about, but nobody would believe it.
And I would never ask you your political persuasion, but who do you think's going to win?
Having travelled across America and having been in 26 cities and listened to people, and I talk to people all the time, I think McCain is going to win. And I actually am an admirer of McCain because I think he's a true American hero. However, he is a little old to be president, and the person he's appointed as his vice president is very scary because we don't want to see her. But I think that's who America is going to go for. The middle Americans, I think, are going to vote for him. And I think that, when we see these polls, Obama is up, and they're usually taking these polls in places like New York and Los Angeles and, which is all liberals.
And if you go to the Midwest, they're simply not, are they?
No, they're not. They're not. And, a lot of people perceive Obama as a Muslim because of his name.
Okay, we're going to come back next and talk about the question that Biggins wants to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
We've got to talk about your fashion. He wants to talk about that. And we'll also talk to you about...
Aha.
We're back on your favourite local radio station with our remaining moments with Jackie Collins today. The book is called Married Lovers, and in it, you're so smart because you seem to press the buttons of things that we're all thinking, but we don't realise we're thinking. For example, I recently joined a gym. You wouldn't know it looking at me, but I did.
You look good.
Thank you. You're very kind. I think Specsavers is for you. Help me with this. Help me with this. Personal trainers.
Yes.
There is something quite sexy about a gym, isn't there? And you look at people who we shouldn't see any sexiness in, and then you bring it to the fore.
This is absolutely true. You take a comedian like Russell Brand, and why is he so funny? Because he says all the things that we're really thinking. And you're right, and that's why people love my character Lucky Santangelo, who will be back in another book, because she says all the things that women would like to do, and she does all the things that women would like to do, and she gets away with it. But I'm very much like that in my own life. I do say things that other people wouldn't dare say.
And the other reality in your books is that when you talk about your ooh scenes, when we look at each other now...
Ooh, Alex. Let's just say it like it is. S-E-X.
Ooh.
Ooh. Oh, it's so sweet.
I'm from the north. I'm too much of a prude. We all have things going on behind those eyes that we never admit. It's a fascinating way that you view the world, in the same way that I think a comedian has to, from a completely different perspective. You come at it another way, don't you?
Yes, I think so. I think, when I was a kid growing up, and we've talked about this before, and I was reading Harold Robbins and Mickey Spillane and all those guy writers, the women were always in the kitchen, the bedroom, sex or cooking. And so when I started to write, I wanted to write really strong, very equal women. And that's why women love my books, because they love the female characters. And yeah, they can do whatever they want to, and especially in the bedroom. And there's a great sex scene in Married Lovers, and it's so equal. And everybody who's read it has said to me, that's what I want to do in my, the next time I have a fantastic affair. That's it.
You don't go too graphic. There's nothing outrageous. It's not porn.
No, absolutely. I'm not a gynecologist. I'm not going to write like some men do when they come up with all these terms. I like to have the reader's imagination take over. That's the important thing, so that the reader actually thinks there's more there than there is, because their imagination has their particular fantasies in, not mine. And that's what's good about it.
And very finally about you, you've been all over the world this year. You went to South Africa. What was that like?
It was kind of scary in a way because, I got off the plane and you see all these kind of shacks on the way from the airport, but not like, 100 shacks, like thousands of them. And you're thinking in this day and age, shouldn't they do something about that? It's, and I had a beautiful PR there, and we walked into the hotel, and she was black, and she said to me, 12 years ago, I would have had to have had a passport to come into this hotel. So I think they've made progress. I think it's a wonderful country on some kind, and I had a wonderful time there. But on the same, they've got to do something about what is going on there with poverty.
Definitely. And the best thing that's happened to you since we last spoke a year ago?
Speaking to you again, Alex.
You see, you're a smooth talker. Finally then, Biggin sat in that chair just a couple of days ago,
did he?
and an old pal of yours, and I said, what can I ask her that would be a great question? And he said, well, ask her about fashion. I said, well, anybody can do that because you're a classy lady, you know how to dress. Please don't get offended by me, don't walk out. He said, ask her, is she getting it? I don't know what that means, but there's the question.
Am I getting the fashion?
Do you think that's what he meant?
I'm sure that's what he meant. I saw him the other night. He didn't look like he was getting it.
Well, his partner works for BA. He was probably in South Africa or somewhere. Jackie, congratulations on being you.
Thank
It's
you,
always
Alex.
nice to talk to you. The new book is called Married Lovers. It is fantastic. It is illuminating. It has everything in there that you need in a Jackie Collins. And there's nothing better than going on holiday for a couple of weeks and being there on the Sun Lounger with Jackie, going through page by page.
Thank you,
Always nice
Alex.
to talk to you, Jackie Collins.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, Alex.